All right, take two. So this is your last video of your 2019-2020 school year for CP Theology 3. Hooray, yay. But there's a lot of content that we're going to go over in this one. In the last video, we talked about the 7th and 10th commandments and our obligation to respect the property of others. In this video, we're going to be talking about the 8th commandment and respecting truthfulness, the virtue of truthfulness. How many of you actually knew that truthfulness was a virtue? Probably not too many of you. So let's dive right in. When we talk about this 8th commandment, it encourages us to be persons of integrity. And really, it forbids us from the sins of lying and gossip. When we look at the Catechism in regards to the 8th commandment, it teaches us that the 8th commandment forbids misrepresenting the truth in our relations with others. The moral prescription flows from the vocation of the holy people to bear witness to their God, who is the truth and wills the truth. Remember, Christ tells us, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So we are called as his followers, as Christians, to be truthful. We therefore have a special vocation to witness the truth and to obey Christ's command to us, which we see in the Gospel of Matthew. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Right? So with that being said, when it comes to being truthful, right, it is a paramount thing that we are as truthful as possible. So there are certain violations directly against this commandment that we need to do our best to avoid committing. So offenses against the 8th commandment: false witness and perjury. We talked about this when we talked about the 2nd commandment and false oaths, right? Swearing false oaths. Perjury is false witness under oath, right? So false witness and perjury. Failing to respect the reputation of others, right? So when we talk about that, that is a sin against others, doing them justice. So sins that we fall prey to sins against others are things like rash judgment, detraction, calumny. Now, let me be clear, each of these are slightly different from each other, right? So rash judgment is where, and I think we've all found ourselves in this position, have rushed to judgment on someone, where we built up a image of them in our head and made kind of a very blanket statement about that person, judgment about that person, without really having all the facts. So when it comes to rash judgment, we really need to think about and be mindful of our need to try and know as much as possible before we try and make a judgment about another person. And of course, we also know that we shouldn't be judging people. We should be judging actions, right? So if we don't like or understand something that somebody says, out of respect for them, out of love for them, out of an obligation to really fulfill the 8th commandment, we should really seek clarification. We should ask them to really kind of expand on what they've said so that we can get a fuller understanding. And maybe our judgment wasn't incorrect, but we don't know unless we follow up and really seek clarification. Detraction is where we reveal something to someone that really doesn't have the right to know that thing. So it's revealing a hidden truth about a person, but one that's not ours to give, right? And the opposite of that is then calumny, in which we make a lie about a person so that other people will judge them. So both ends of the same are the same for detraction and calumny. We want to hurt the reputation of another person. In the case of detraction, we give a truth that other people really shouldn't have to hurt their reputation. In the case of calumny, we lie about this other person. And both of them really are kind of related to gossip, right? And we do this all the time, like whether it's in the cafeteria when we're in school or whatever. where we, say those things, spread those seeds to hurt other people, hurt their reputation. And out of justice, we shouldn't be hurting other people. Out of love, out of respect, we shouldn't be hurting other people at all, but certainly in those ways, okay, particularly hurting their reputations. Encouraging others to do evil, right? So how do we do that? The textbook, again, on page 250, gives you a couple of different ways. They mention the sins of flattery, adulation, and complacence, right? Flattery is paying someone a compliment to gain a favor, right? Not necessarily genuine. So you're using them, right? You're using words to use the person. And in the case of adulation, you are, I don't know the way to put this other than say, like, you're blowing somebody up, right? You are feeding into their ego as much as possible. You are overpraising that person to, again, hopefully, in your case, not hopefully, but you probably hope this, that they will look upon you with favor, do something for you, etc. And then complacence is pleasing others so they'll carry out your wishes. All of them are wrong if they encourage another person to do something that's wrong. And they're generally wrong-headed ways to do this because, again, we have an obligation to be truthful in our relations, truthful in our communications with other people. Boasting and bragging, right? They're a form of lying and they're wrong. As the proverb puts it, self-praise is no recommendation, as your textbook tells us. If you're telling the truth, it's not really bragging or boasting, right? If you're doing something to blow yourself up so that you look better in the eyes of others, that's not true. That is obviously problematic when it comes to the eighth commandment. Irony, and I find myself sometimes doing this one, not in a sinful way, but sometimes it can get pretty close. Speaking in an ironic or sarcastic way to, which in and of itself, again, is not necessarily sinful, but if you do it to poke fun at or to hurt someone's feelings, that's where it becomes wrong and problematic. And of course, the big one when it comes to the eighth commandment is lying, right? That's the most kind of straightforward violation of the eighth commandment. It is when we tell a falsehood, right? We say something that is not true. The Catechism defines it as speaking or acting against the truth in order to lead into error someone who has the right to know the truth, right? So a lie is the most direct violation against the truth. And how we determine its seriousness, right? How we determine whether that sin of lying is venial or mortal really depends on four things. Now, they're related to the three things that make a sin, which we talked about earlier in the year. I'm not going to repeat now, right? The nature of the truth that is distorted. So what exactly is the lie, right? So the nature of the truth. Second is the circumstances in which you tell the lie. Third, the intentions of the one who lies. So what's your end? What are you seeking to happen? And fourth, the harm suffered by the victims of the lie. All those together, right, need to be evaluated to determine whether or not the lie is a mortal sin or not. But at the end of the day, we can, instead of doing all of that unnecessary work to figure out how sinful our lie is, avoid lying altogether and tell the truth. Lying is problematic in so many ways, but not least of all because it makes communication difficult, an already problematic thing for many people, right? Truth in speech, written language, and any other form of communication is important because truth makes us trust in our human interactions. And when it comes to any type of miscommunication, particularly the cases of direct lies, it creates mistrust and discord in all human relationships and can sow the seeds of hatred amongst others. So that's really one of the reasons we need to keep this at the forefront of our minds. Okay? That's really the bulk of what I want to go over with you. There's some other stuff in terms of the value of building up a truthful society on pages 252 and 253 in your textbook, which are good, and you should read them. The main thing I want you to read, though, on page 253 is the blurb at the bottom, The Epidemic of Cheating. Again, we've talked about this before. Cheating is stealing and lying. It's the perfect combination of the 7th and 8th commandments, right? So read up on that blurb, the bottom of page 253, which does give you an exercise to look into, as well as some interesting reading and reflection. Let's finish up your Unit 8 questions, and let's finish strong. The first question, what is required by the 8th commandment? And it's very simple. Truthfulness, right? Truthfulness, the virtue of truthfulness is what is required by the 8th commandment. We are required to be honest. Question number 2, why should Christians be persons of truth? Again, I gave you this answer in the video. Christians have a special vocation to witness to the truth because of Jesus himself, who is the way, the truth, and the life. The third question, define these terms: perjury, false witness, detraction, calumny. How do they violate the 8th commandment? Taking false witness under oath is perjury. It falsely accuses an innocent person of something that they did not do, or conversely, it absolves someone of a crime that they did do. So that's bearing false witness. You're lying in one way or the other. Detraction, right? Detraction reveals a person's faults and failings to someone who did not previously know about them and has no right or need to know about them, right? And the opposite kind of form of this, calumny, is lying about other people so that people make false judgments about them. Both detraction and calumny are forms of gossip and damaging to the reputation of others. All of them breach truthfulness required by the 8th commandment. Your fourth question, when are flattery or adulation or complacence wrong, and what does each of these terms mean? So they are wrong when we lead another person to doing something immoral or sinful, but each of them is slightly different. Flattery is paying a compliment or a favor, usually because you want something in return. Adulation, giving excessive admiration to someone. So, for example, like a boss so that you get a job or a raise, etc., even though you might not necessarily mean it. And then complacence, pleasing others so they carry out your wishes. Lots of different examples you can think of, but like bribery is one of those things. Like, oh, if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. Like doing stuff so that other people do things for you. That is an example of complacence. Your fifth question, define the term lying, give some examples. Lying is speaking or acting against the truth in order to lead into error someone who has the right to know the truth. Examples of lying are so numerous that you can kind of look anywhere in the world and find them. And a great example of lying that was harmful, let's see. Let's look at recent news. Let me pause for a second so I'm not sitting here looking. All right, came up with one. Not that recent, but in 1994, under oath, the CEO of R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco manufacturer, said that cigarette smoking is no more addictive than coffee, tea, or Twinkies. Yikes. Very harmful lie, as we all know, because cigarettes are super addicting. All right, next one, number 6. Do you always have to tell everyone everything you know, why or why not? And this is a good distinction that I didn't get into earlier in the video, but you should know. The answer is no, right? Sometimes we must use discreet language for the good and safety of others, to respect privacy rights, or for the sake of the common good. This is not advocating that we lie. We always have to be as truthful as possible with our answers. But the reality is sometimes people aren't privy to all the information that's available. For example, if one of my students asked me what another student's grade was, are they someone who should have access to the truth? No. So I wouldn't tell them, right? I would just say that's none of your business, and I wouldn't be saying it to be mean, just being factual, right? And oftentimes professional truths are the ones that we have a responsibility not to reveal to others. It's one of the highest ones. The highest truth that should not be revealed is one that happens in the sacrament of reconciliation, right? So, there are truths that shouldn't be revealed, but it does not advocate that we are untruthful in our responses. The next question, what is the sacramental seal of the confessional? Again, review from something we talked about earlier in the year. Sacramental seal of confession is what keeps the seals confessed in the sacrament of reconciliation from ever being revealed to anyone, right? They are between you and God, and his representative, in this case, the priest, who, again, is obliged not to reveal any of that stuff. And again, as I explained, earlier in the year, very rarely do priests kind of hold on to any of that information. It's gone immediately after the confession is confessed. I'm not really going to answer the last two. You guys are perfectly capable of answering them, but I will read them. What are some duties of government officials when it comes to helping to create an honest society? You can read those on pages 252 and 253. And what write of a time when you told the truth and were proud of doing so. Hopefully, you have a plethora of examples that you can draw from your own life. I don't know about you guys, but anytime I'm able to tell the truth and it is a helpful one, I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I am happy that I'm able to cooperate with God's direction for my life, that I am an advocate and truthful person as I'm asked to be. So that's it. That's all I've got for you. Hopefully you guys have a great day and have lots of questions when I see you on Wednesday. Love you, miss you, see you. Bye. And I hit the wrong button. Whoops. Now I really mean it. Bye.